My principal, Scott McKelvey, models collaboration by including myself, along with the school improvement team, in the review of school and community data to identify trends and target areas for school improvement. The vision and plan, developed collaboratively, was presented first to the curriculum leaders for continued discussion and then back to the school improvement team for revision. Finally, the school improvement plan was presented to staff. LK Connect is a small group of teacher leaders that supports the one-to-one iPad project in my school. The team works collaboratively on all fronts, from executing the logistics of the iPad project to the facilitation of iPad use in the classroom through regular professional development sessions and support in the classroom. In a second example, one Masters of Education course, ESC 516, required pairs of students to collaboratively choose Web 2.0 tools and web resources and critically review them. In a second collaborative task, we were required to create and produce a critical analysis tool. The research behind this was significant, but more importantly, working collaboratively allowed us to become more efficient in completing the tasks. And even more significant, we became more proficient with the use of the tools we were investigating by supporting each other's learning. Learning how to use new technologies is a regular, informal occurrence in both my personal life and the workplace. I generally tackle this by trial and error, perhaps researching when I'm having difficulty, or seeking assistance from a colleague or student for support. In the event they are learning too, I would engage in a collaborative learning environment. In the Masters of Education course, EMT 501, my final assessment was a blended learning and 21st century classrooms project. I introduced an LMS, a learning management system, at my school for use by teachers and students. And this was a tool to support the shift in instructional practices to incorporate 21st century learning competencies. In order to do this, I had to explore and assess a variety of learning management systems. It was also necessary to gain in-depth skill and competency in one LMS for the purpose of blended learning. A second example, the Teacher Leadership and Learning Program, granted us some funds. The LK Connect group embarked on a research project to develop a teacher toolkit to aid in the embedding of technology and 21st century skills into pedagogy and classroom instruction, and we wish to share with our entire school board. It was a collaborative effort to increase the vision, to create the vision, submit the proposal, and then develop the plan. We used focus groups and data collection and analyzed the data to ultimately guide the toolkit contents, and finally, workshops shared our learning with other teachers. In both examples, my learning resembled my informal learning format: collaboration, research, trial and error, as there was no formal direction to guide my learning. Informally, I have learned how to read the media by using my own critical eye and my own experience. I review the media. The media doesn't necessarily need to be a web resource. Media can be any form. Generally, I would look for the author. Is the author someone of an expert authority? Is it relevant to what I'm trying to learn? How current is the resource? What's the design of the resource? Is it user-friendly? Is it engaging? Does it allow for the 21st century skills? Does it allow an individual to create content? Does it allow collaboration and communication? Does it require critical thinking? And finally, does it support your pedagogy and the assessment? My formal learning in terms of how to read the media came from two master's courses where we were investigating both TPAC and the TIPS lesson planning strategy. TPAC, both of these were new to me through these courses. TPAC I found a very useful tool in terms of a teacher self-assessment. Where are you now? What do you need to learn, get better at, figure out, so that you can move forward with your lesson planning. The TIPS lesson planning strategy, the graphic there shows a linear model, but I actually view it as more of a cyclic model, where you determine where you are, what's the relative advantage, and this comes from the TPAC strategy. I would then move to the next phase. What are your objectives and your assessments? Figure out, okay, this is the type of technology I want to use. How am I going to use it? Work on developing those integration strategies, and then moving it into a lesson plan, into the instructional environment. Finally, some self-reflection, self-assessment, evaluation, and rather than coming to the end of the road, loop back, make it a cycle. Take your reflections and improve for the next time around. For examples of my informal learning of inclusive leadership, I come back again to my principal, Scott McKelvey, who leads by example. He provides leadership opportunities for staff and myself. For example, in our school-based technology plan, staff is included in the development of the plan, and they're part of the process to take on leadership roles within the execution of the plan. In a second example, my principal and I worked through the process of teacher performance appraisals. The first appraisal of the year we would do together as a team. The second appraisal, my principal would do the appraisal and these serve as a scaffold, and my principal then gives me a project, for example the capital budget, where I can put into practice what I've been a part of. I can take elements from previous situations and experiences as they fit into my current project. My formal learning of inclusive leadership has come from the Ontario Principals Council, where I've elected to participate in several webinars. The most recent webinars that I've been a part of are one on the Ontario Leadership Framework, the OLF. The OLF is a guide for leaders in the Ontario educational system, and it provides the characteristics, the competencies that effective leaders possess and how they can move a school. My informal learning on how to negotiate differences in individuals recently came from researching the SAMR model, and this was after discussion with a colleague on what they had found out about SAMR and how they were using it. Rubens Pentadura put forth this model to identify 4 distinct phases through which teachers pass while integrating technology into instructional practice. My formal learning is in 2 different areas, one from our school board's DI team and a second from some master's courses that I've been involved with. The DI team in my school board is proficient in assessment for as and of learning, and also the 3-part lesson. These strategies in both of these lesson design and assessment practices were shared through PD sessions, and the sessions with the DI team also provided collaborative time to develop resources, and future sessions reflected on those resources, allowed for revision of the resources, and also creation of additional resources. Collaboration has actually been a big part of my learning here. 2 master's courses, the first course and the last course, have played a role in my learning formally. The very first course, EER 504, allowed me to continue research from my informal setting around learner preferences of the digital learner. I explored the brain development and the plasticity of the brain of an adolescent, and why and how this explains their learner preferences and their skill, their intuitive ability in many aspects of web and technology use. This last course and the textbook New Learning has given me a new appreciation for differences. I would now not try to negotiate or navigate the differences to assimilate. Recognizing the value in all of our uniqueness and embracing and then harnessing our differences will move us all to a new place. This view moved me beyond awareness and acceptance, and I'm now negotiating my path as an educator. How do I design courses, units, lessons, and activities with this mindset? I'm not entirely confident with my initial attempts in activity design, but that's part of the learning process. I will reflect and revise, or maybe I will be starting over. Instincts that can be trusted. I believe I've learned or developed these instincts for the most part from informal experiences and informal settings. I've had numerous mentors who along the way have modeled different decisions, different choices, different actions, and they've also guided me and helped in my reflective practice. So observing not only the mentor, but observing in other situations has really contributed to developing my instincts. Preparation in any sort of project that you're going into, the better prepared you are, the more likely you will be able to deal with whatever may come up in a given situation or given experience. Of course, all the preparation in the world and something can throw it off. But the better prepared you are, generally, the better you can deal with anything that comes your way. Trial and error is a regular part of my own learning, and it's been part of the learning of instincts and being able to trust my instincts. I know what's worked in the past and what hasn't worked so well, and these all contribute to various experiences that I've had. These experiences in themselves are part of that learning, and part of gaining the ability to trust your instincts. Probably the most significant part of any of this is reflection. I believe that I learn best by reflecting on what's transpired. I suppose you could say that informally I've learned as well. I use this sort of a process of observation, preparation, trial and error, and reflection in almost any situation. So going through various courses through the master's program or other professional learnings that I've had, this sort of a format has really served me well. As an example of this learning or through the process, we have a student in our school who has multiple seizures. The very first time that I experienced this student having a seizure, obviously I had seen seizures previously. I had done my preparation. I knew what I should do. Actually in the situation though, and things don't always go as planned. So there was a bit of a trial and error element to it, even though I was prepared. Through this experience, I did self-reflection, some self-assessment on how we dealt with the situation. My principal and I met after the fact as well, and we refined the actions that took place during that seizure. And subsequent seizures, we continued to do the same thing. We would network after there was an episode and refine what we had done, and through this process, multiple seizures, unfortunately for this student, but we are much better at handling the situation now. The seventh type of learning to demonstrate is authenticity or street credibility. And this, I feel, is actually quite similar to the previous one on developing your instincts that can be trusted. The difference being that with authenticity and street credibility, this is how others perceive you, whereas your instincts that you can trust, that's your own perception. The authenticity, I really use a similar type of strategy in working on my authenticity and how I relate to others and how others see me. I use mentors. I observe quite regularly various situations, what works well, what doesn't work well. I engage in discussions, in dialogue with staff, and these discussions really help me to get to know individual staff professionally and personally. Demonstrating my own work ethic models to others, and also lets others view me and, and what I really bring to the workplace. I try to lead by example. I believe that anything you do should reflect your thoughts, your views, your passions. And of course, trial and error is a part of this whole process. If something works, great. Even if it does work, great. How can you make it better? If it didn't quite work, what would you do differently? If it doesn't work well, or if you make a mistake, one of the most important aspects is admitting error, and that goes a long way in your street credibility. If you can accept responsibility for decisions or actions. All of these experiences, again, come back to reflection. If you are going to grow, you need to reflect. Formally, I believe I've also developed or worked on my authenticity and street credibility, and primarily the Ontario Principals Council has done webinars around the Ontario Leadership Framework. The Ontario Leadership Framework has 2 domains which really do speak volumes to those soft skills of social skills. How do you relate to others? How can you work with others? That sort of thing. So formally, yes, I believe in this instance, authenticity I've developed formally and informally. What have I learned? My learnings consist of both tangible items, such as knowledge and the skills to use various technologies, and also the intangibles, or the soft skills, such as leadership, collaboration, communication, critical thinking, and creativity. In all examples, I've learned both formally and informally. In what ways are the boundaries between the formal and informal domains of learning changing? What does this mean for informal learning? The designs of the Masters of Education courses, while directing our learning in a formal way, have permitted individual students to customize learning, and as such have contributed to a great deal of crossover between formal and informal learning. The learning may have begun under the auspice of one, but transitioned to the other. The relevance of the learning, because of this design, encouraged additional exploration and therefore depth of learning. The lines between formal and informal have blurred positively, impacting my learning experiences. Of the examples of my own learning, which can be taught in a formal educational setting, I now believe both. We need to continue to explore how education can connect the life world experience. This should be at the heart of instructional practice.